Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. My name is Allison Rendelman and I'm a Customer Success Associate here at YCharts. Hosting our webinar today is my colleague Callie Ochanicki, a fellow Customer Success Associate on our team. For today's topic, we're going to take a look at the newly redesigned Equity Screener and use it to create a universe of consumer cyclical stocks. Throughout the webinar, we'll have a live Q&A via chat, where you can ask questions in the section to the lower right corner of the screen. We will answer some of those questions at the end of Callie's demonstration. Any questions that are not answered during the Q&A session will be answered by your support contact. Please keep in mind that the content of this webinar is meant for educational purposes only and is not intended to be used as investment advice, nor is YCharts acting as an advising party regarding client funds in any way. Finally, as always, a recording of the webinar will be made available on the website and sent to all attendees. Now, I'm going to pass it off to Callie to get us started.
Thank you for getting us started today, Allison. And to everyone in our audience, we appreciate you listening in. Today, we're first going to hop into the Equity Screener tool. We're going to create a universe of stocks based upon a particular sector. Then, we're going to transfer our universe into the dashboard as a watch list. Then from there, we're going to view our watch list in fundamental charts, and we're going to compare securities against some economic indicators. And lastly, we're going to tie together all the tools we used, and we're going to finish with a custom emails report. So a recent topic of discussion and definitely a good conversation that I've had with several of our users is within the last year, we've seen a decline of the consumer cyclical sector. And then as technology continues to advance, I'm particularly curious to find which retail companies can directly compete. So first, I'm going to hover over Tools, and I'm going to click on Equity Screener. While we're waiting for that to load, you're going to see here that the design looks a lot more modern. It looks a lot more sleek compared to, for those of you who are familiar with our old Equity Screener. And then for new users, things are pretty similar. Just a few things have been moved around. Just to cover a general overview of some of the modifications we made, when you modify the equity universe, we can click on Modify here. Any modifications to the equity universe, these are going to be qualitative. Then, if we want to make any quantitative changes to the universe, we can click on Add Filter here. You're going to see here that the design's a little more horizontal. We'll still have our same metric filters that we can create. We'll have a range. We'll have equations, percentile, so we can take a particular top or bottom percentile. And we can also create a rank. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to go ahead and modify my equity universe. I'm going to first click on sectors, and then I'm going to click on consumer cyclical. The first industry I'm going to bring in is apparel stores. So I'm going to make sure that's intersected, and I'm going to submit this. Then I'm going to make a second modification. I'll click on Modify again. I'll click Sectors. We'll hop back into consumer cyclical. We're going to add another industry. So here, if I scroll down just a bit, I'm going to add department stores and submit this. You're going to see here that we went from a universe of over 21,000 stocks, and now we're down to 111. So that was a pretty good modification there. Next, I'm going to layer on some quantitative filters. So the first filter I'm going to use, if I click on Add Filter, I'm going to make sure I have equation selected. And I am going to use revenue, 5-year growth. I'm going to make sure my dropdown is selected to greater than, and I'm going to use 0. And once I hit enter, we can see that these, both the metric and the value, are locked in. And I'm looking at this because I want companies with long-term revenue growth. Next, I'm going to add a second filter. We'll still keep it as an equation, and this time we're going to use a relative metric. And relative metrics are pretty neat because it serves as an equation. So it's comparing the particular metric to that same metric of the industry. So I'm going to use relative price to sales ratio, and I'm going to use it for the industry since we've gone more granular than just the sector. I'm going to select my drop down to less than 1. and we're going to submit. Now we're going to see this has taken us down to 25 results. Typically, after I make any modifications in metric filters, I like to remove any duplicates because I want to keep companies with the largest share volume within my universe. Now the last step in creating a screen is applying a scoring model. And then just briefly, a scoring model allows you to build out a custom score for your universe based upon particular metrics that are most meaningful to you. So if I click on scoring models, I'm going to create a new scoring model. We're going to go ahead and give this store score as the title. I'm going to leave my rank. I'm going to leave my score as a rank. There is other options that you can use, but rank is most meaningful to me. The first component that I'm going to add, or the first metric I'm going to use, if I click on this, I'm going to use gross profit margin. It's just a sec. I'm going to use the TTM. We're going to leave this as higher is better. We're going to null values to 0. And with this null values, if this metric does not apply to a particular company, I get to decide where that company is going to fall in the rank. I'm going to weight this in at 50%. The second scoring component, and it's definitely relevant to the retail sector, is cost of goods sold. I'm also going to look at the TTM version. We're going to want lower as better. We're going to null the values to 0 again. And we'll also weight this in at 50%. And we just want to make sure that all of our weights add up to 100% as they do. And we can go ahead and add this score column. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to click into this particular column so that way I can sort it, with 1 being the best score. So based upon our metric filters that we use and based upon the scoring model that we use, ASNA ranks in first. So a couple things I'm going to do. I'm going to save my universe as a watch list because I'm going to refer back to this later on. So I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call it retail screen. And I'm going to save this down. Next, a couple things that I'm going to cover very quickly. You can definitely add in metric columns to your screen. This is basically just adding supplementary data to your screen. It's not going to narrow or add to your universe in any way. Same thing with info columns. This is still going to be qualitative information. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save my screen so it remains in my screen library. So if I click on new equity screen, I can save this down. I'm going to call this retail screen. Click Save As. And the moment you save down a screen, a couple of magical things happen. This little bell icon here will allow me to activate alerts for my screen. So if any companies enter or exit my screen, I'll be notified of this. Additionally, you can always export your screen, export the raw data into a CSV file. So it'll carry all of your companies along with the different metrics that you apply. And another thing that's pretty cool with this share functionality, if I share, if say my firm and me as a user is affiliated with other users, I can share this with other users as well, and they can definitely see my screen if they want to refer back to it. So now we're going to jump gears and we're going to hop into the dashboard. This is where watch lists are built. So you can access the dashboard by either clicking on Tools and Dashboard, or you can just simply click on the Y-Charts icon. So you can see here that I do already have some watch lists built out. So what I'm going to do in order to bring in a watch list from the screen, I can go ahead and click Add Watch List to Dashboard. Now since we were working in the equity screener, I'm going to choose equity as my type of watch list. And then I'm going to add that one in. So a couple things we're going to note. This is a nice way to keep a closer track of particular companies of my interest. With the Overview tab, this is where we're going to see kind of the most current price. We're going to see the price changes and then the percent change. This next tab here, the Data tab, this is a lot more where you can get granular because you can choose which metrics you want. I already have metrics that are important to me and do relate to the retail sector. And these can also be sorted as we did see with the columns in the screener. If I want to look at market cap and arrange it by which company has the largest market cap, we can see here ticker AONNY has the largest market cap. If I ever want to get rid of any of these, I can exit out, or I can do the same with securities. I can always exit out of a security. A couple other tabs here, the events tab. This will notify me of earnings, dividends, splits, and spinoffs, or other miscellaneous events. If I just want to look at earnings, I can uncheck these other ones. And this will only display earnings for me. We're also going to have an alerts and a news tab. And the best place to keep track of all your alerts, you can definitely, if you click on options, create or edit alerts for your watch list here. But a good way to keep track of everything is if you click on this cash symbol down here and then create or delete alerts. You can see these are my previous alerts that I had. And you can see here that I do have some alerts set up. If I expand these, I have some price. I have an alert set for price, and then I have an alert set to notify me of any new events. Lastly, we have this news tab here. This just comes from a couple different sources, with the most popular source being Yahoo. Now, from here, we can bring our watch list into other tools pretty seamlessly. If I click on options, I can click on this view in tab, and I can choose to view this in other tools as well, which is what I'm going to do. I want to view my watch list in the fundamental chart. So if I click on view in fundamental chart, this is going to bring me directly there. By default, I have my settings to show price, and we can see here that we have the watch list displaying down below. It's going to be in alphabetical order, and I can quickly toggle through this by clicking on these arrow keys to just show the price of different securities. For me, I'm going to keep ASNA up, because this was the security that did rank in first in our screener tool. And now I'm going to layer on other economic indicators. So the first one I'm going to add is U.S. change in retail sales. I'm also going to add U.S. retail sales. And lastly, I'm going to add U.S. department store sales. Next, under data format, I'm going to normalize my chart so the values display as a percent change. I'm going to leave my time frame as 1 year, as I'm looking a little bit more short term and I'm looking within the last year. And you'll notice here, U.S. change in retail sales, it was already displaying as a percent. So I don't necessarily want the normalization of this value. So what I can do to fix this is click on the Annotate tab. I can go ahead and click on the plus mark here to change this. And what I can do is I can override the normalized value. So if I turn this on, you're going to see that we're not showing a percent change, but rather we're just keeping that static value. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip on presentation view. I'm going to make a couple other changes to this chart. I'm going to give it a title. I'm going to call it retail chart. If you click update here, that's going to lock that in. You can see the change there. Notes, I can do ASNA versus economy. We'll want to update that again. With the chart size, you do have the ability to change the chart size. I'm happy with medium. You can definitely change it out to something smaller or something larger. And this is what the full chart looks like. If I flip back on to presentation view and say, let's say I wanted to export this to another platform, I can either export the raw data or download the image. And if I click on download image, it's going to drop down as an attachment. And if I open this up here, we can see our full chart, and that looks a lot cleaner. Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to save down my chart into my chart library. So if I click on new fundamental chart, I'm going to choose Save As. I'm going to call this Retail Chart. A couple other functionalities I'm going to cover is the export function. If I click on export, like I mentioned previously, it's just you can export the raw data or you can print this out. And additionally, with share, this is pretty cool because just like with the screen, how you can share that with members on your team, you can also do that here with the chart, or you can share it to other social media platforms. Now, to summarize our workflow today, I'm going to jump into Tools. And lastly, I'm going to click on Email Reports. Since the chart was a visual aspect of a workflow, Custom Email Reports serves as a nice complement, so I'm going to build one out. So I'm going to click Create New. I'm going to call this Retail Industry. Description. I'm going to leave this as Store Performance. You can definitely change out the frequencies. If you want a daily frequency, monthly, or quarterly, you can choose that as well. I'm happy with weekly, and I'm going to begin adding my modules. I click on Add Module. The first one I'm going to add in is the Stock Security List Review. And this is cool because we show volume trend and market cap in this one. Then I can scroll down and choose what I want to display, and I'm going to use my watch list that I created. The second module I'm going to add is the Security Return Summary. I'm going to choose my watch list again. And then lastly, I'm going to add in my fundamental chart. And what's nice is here, while you're still in the builder, you can preview it ahead of time. That way you know what you're getting. So if I click on Preview, I can view my full email report that's going to be sent to me. So it's going to include my chart, my heat map with my performance, and some other performance related along with volume trends and market cap. I'm going to save this down. And then if I head back, it'll show in my library. Currently I'm subscribed to that, which means I'm going to receive my email notifications. You can either edit it, which will take you back to the builder, or you can either preview it directly from the library or delete it if you need to. And while closing out with the custom email reports, this is going to conclude the demonstration portion of today's webinar. We're going to turn things over to Allison, and she's going to cover some Q&A for us.
Thank you, Callie. And thank you for giving us a closer look at the equity screener using our dashboard, fundamental charts, and the custom email reports. Before we jump into the Q&A, I do want to mention again the recording of this webinar will be made available in the support topics section of our site in case you need to review anything we went over or share it with your colleagues. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. There are a few I'll bring up now for Callie to answer. So, Callie, the first question we got is, can I bring in a watch list I created on the dashboard into the screener?
Yes, that's definitely a great question, and this is a common one that I talk to many users about. So if you, a lot of folks, the typical workflow will be that they'll have a list of tickers, whether it's stock or fund tickers, in an Excel spreadsheet. They'll typically copy and paste those down. And you can paste them down when you create a new watch list. After naming your watch list, you can paste your symbols in down here. Once you click Add, that'll be a whole separate watch list for you. And then from there, if we go back into the equity screener, we can then bring in any watch list that we've created on the dashboard simply by modifying the universe, clicking watch lists, and then my watch lists. And say I wanted to bring in Callie's portfolio, I can do so here and then begin adding on my metric columns or any sort of metric filters I want to add.
Thanks. And the next question we got is, which tabs are customizable on the dashboard?
For sure. So the overview tab is not going to be customizable, but there's no worries to that because we do have this nice data tab here. And this is where we can change out other metrics. So say I no longer wanted to look at beta 5-year, I can simply get rid of this by Xing out of it. And then under options, I can click add metric to data view. And let's say I was interested in alpha 1 year. You can see here that the values bring down very nicely. And I can always get rid of these as well. And the nice thing too, if I want this to show first in my list, I can just simply drag and drop and that'll display first under the data tab.
Finally, our last question for you. How do I add sharing capabilities for my team?
That's a great question. And the sharing functionality is pretty cool, especially for users within a firm that they have multiple licenses. We do have the ability to create a group for individuals who have multiple licenses, and simply once you are in a group, you will be able to see each other's dashboard, you'll be able to see each other's watch lists, or you'll be able to see each other's screens. So that'll be nice there where you have access to everything that your coworkers have created.
Thank you, Callie, for covering those questions, and thank you all for attending today's webinar. We're excited to be releasing the newly designed Equity Screener tool, and we would appreciate any feedback you may have. If you have any questions in regards to the screening or visual tool screen, or have an interest in gaining access to them, feel free to reach out to your YCharts contact. Thanks again.